Okay, so my talk tonight is it's following on from the one that I did about a year ago, which was on the Open HAB home automation bus. But I've taken a completely different approach to it tonight. Instead, I've just sort of like stripped everything back to basics, and I'm going to demonstrate the use of a Spring Boot web app with just one controller in it, controlling LED light bulbs in Shrewsbury from Wolverhampton. So just a quick recap on Internet of Things. So these are network connected devices that basically do useful things in your house. So you might have the Wi-Fi controlled bulbs, like we've got the EasyBulbs at home, and then the electric socket, so you can use like a phone app to turn electric sockets on and off. So we've got Wi-Fi plug at home, and then Wi-Fi controlled heating, like the Nest thermostat that's been in the news recently because a software update caused it to basically drain the batteries in next to no time and stop working in the middle of January when it's, blooming freezing, we've had snow. So there are a lot of people that are quite cross that their thermostats have stopped working. And then if you've got solar panels like we've got on our roof, then there's solutions for monitoring how much electricity the solar panels are generating. So some of those are like Open Energy Monitor would be my choice because it's open source and uses Raspberry Pis. There's also OWL, and then there's Green Energy Options, and that is the firm that Cat Smith that used to work for Connect is now working out in Cambridge, just out of interest. And then you've got your network connected white goods like fridges and washing machines, etc., coffee machines. But the problem, as I see it, is you've got all these devices, they've got their own phone app, but how do you get them to talk to each other to do useful things? So, as far as I'm concerned, they're basically just network devices, so they're going to be talking to each other using TCP/IP and UDP. So, if you can basically work out what protocol they're talking to each other on, from the phone app to the device, then you should be able to, in theory, write some Java that takes the place of the phone app to control them. Also the problem that I found is that some are reliant on cloud applications. So while the EasyBulbs are quite happily just working on my local network, the Wi-Fi plugs require connecting to a cloud app. So that's caused issues where they've not been quite as reliable as I would have hoped in the past. But hopefully, if I can come up with a solution to control them from my Raspberry Pi 2, then they'll be a lot more useful. And then there's also potential security implications of having a cloud app controlling devices in your house, especially if you can push software updates to it from the cloud. Because, imagine somebody hacks into your Nest thermostat that's got the occupancy monitoring. If they hack into the cloud app and if they find out you're away from home, they might take the opportunity to burgle the house, for example. And then there was the case of, I think it was a network-connected baby monitor that people were listening to people's conversations on. And the network-connected security cameras, people could spy on people's security cameras, especially if they haven't changed the default password. And in terms of Open HAB, it did look promising, but what I didn't like about it was that you actually needed to learn its domain-specific language for it to be able to actually do anything. So while it was, straightforward to install it on a Pi 2, and to get the demo application up and running, I just ran out of time and patience trying to get it to do anything useful. So I've sort of abandoned that approach for the time being. So the solution that I've come up with now is to create a very simple Spring Boot application. It's running on a Pi 2 at the house in Shrewsbury, and it's got a REST-style API, so you can just ping HTTP requests at this to do things with the EasyBulb lights, and hopefully ultimately the Wi-Fi plugs and anything else that I get that's sort of Internet of Thingsy at home in future. And so the idea is that you just fire off an HTTP request at Spring Boot, and that will then fire off the appropriate network commands unique to each device that you've got. And that's abstracting away the underlying protocol of the device, so you don't need to worry about what packets are going between the phone app and the device itself, because you just call the URL on Spring Boot and then Spring Boot does all the magic, doing all the network communication with the devices. And so the idea then is that if I've got like simple API that I can just fire off HTTP URLs to get things to happen, that I could write something on top of this. So, something along the lines of if this then that, but open source, that's again running on the Pi 2. So then I could just, design my own kind of like phone app that just controls all the devices in the house in a useful way, and it's not reliant on the cloud. And the advantages, as I see it, of this is, for starters, everything's inside my local network, so there's no reliance on cloud applications. So it's going to be a lot harder for anybody to hack in to my house, because if they hack the cloud app, then the stuff's going nowhere near the cloud. And it's also, it keeps on ticking. If the internet goes down, then my local network is still up and running. And then also it's a lot more flexible. So, just exposing the IoT devices over HTTP and REST inside the local network basically means I can stick anything I like on top of that, rather than, OpenHAB, that was reliant on like OpenHAB's web app and phone app for controlling it. And also extensibility, and I'm going to come on to this later on. There's a device called Mycroft that's based on the Raspberry Pi 2 that I've supported that via a Kickstarter, and I'm hopefully going to get some units of that in the summer to play around with, and that will do things like voice control. And then some of my Connect colleagues might have seen the Raspberry Pi project that Team Jarvis did back in December, which was along the lines of voice control using something called Jasper, or as I changed it to Jarvis, so it was like named after Team Jarvis. But unfortunately, in the end, that didn't work at the demo, although it was causing a lot of amusement in the office by speaking to you in a Brummie accent. So I'm going to do something dramatic in a few minutes, and that is to do a live demo, but doing FaceTime to Shrewsbury, and then I'm going to ping off requests at the web browser so you can see the lights turning on and off, changing between white and various colours, changing the brightness so you can dim them down, and there's even something called disco mode where it like flashes like lights at a disco. But let me see what's the next bit. Cool. So I'm going to do that now, but before I go on to the bit that's a bit dangerous, I'm going to just fire up STS and just show you what the code is like. So if I just bring up the controller, so the actual application itself is just like a really Mickey Mouse Spring Boot app that just has got a main function that says just run this thing for me please. But then in the controller itself, it's making use of this MyLight Wi-Fi box class, which is something that I borrowed from GitHub. It's an open source project for controlling the EasyBulb lights. So that handles all the network protocol stuff. So what we've just got some very simple request mappings. So you can just like, the whole controller has got the prefix of EasyBulb, so all the requests have got /EasyBulb in front of them. And then you can just like, something like /EasyBulb/off.html will turn all the lights off. They're in, it's split into groups, the EasyBulbs are, so there's 4 channels. So channel 1 is the lights by the stairs, which the camera's not going to be able to show those. Channel 2 is the lights above the TV, and then channel 3 is like the lights around the side of the room. Channel 4 is Sonia's bedside lamp that's also going to be off camera, so I'm just going to focus on channels 2 and 3 for the demo. But as you can see, it's like very straightforward. It's just calling this GitHub open source API for controlling the bulbs. So I mean, this is just like a demonstration of like how simple it is to get this thing up and running. So it's time to live dangerously. FaceTime, where are they? Here we go. So I'm just calling up Sonia in Shrewsbury. And there we go, we've got the lights. So you can see the blue one is the channel 2, that's the one above the TV, and then the purple one is channel 3, which is the lights at the side of the room. So what I could do, if I want to turn channel 3 off, then I just fire this command that ends with off/3.html, and it turns the lights off. So I can turn channel 3 back on again. And to show that channel 2 works as well, we can turn channel 2 off. Oh, I must have pinged that as well. It must be getting quite dark in there now. And so we can put channel 2 back on, and then this is a demo of disco mode. So turn it to disco mode and it starts scrolling through all the colours. But that's probably a bit too psychedelic for poor Sonia. So I'm going to just change the colour to looks like some sort of yellow, that does. Then if I change it to 1, then it's a nice blue. And let's try something like 200. And that's a nice kind of purpley colour, that is. And I'm going to put channel 3 back on, so we can turn on channel 3. That's on again. And I'm going to change the brightness of channel 3 now. So I can dim that right down really low, so you can see you can like dim them down really low. And make it a bit brighter. And then sort of like I can max the brightness again by knocking it just like it's 59. Yeah, so it's now full brightness. And then I'm going to change the colour of channel 2 back to what it was. So that was 70, which is a nice turquoise. So that's how you control your lights from a browser in Wolverhampton when your lights are in your lounge in Shrewsbury. And it worked. So what I'm going to do next, to start the security improvements, I've got a Raspberry Pi that's sitting downstairs that's got quite a new version of Raspbian on it. And I want to set that up as its own wireless access point. So it's going to have an SSID of Madhouse, and all the Internet of Things devices are going to connect to that instead of the B2 router upstairs. And the only problem with that is I need to order a different Wi-Fi dongle because the one that I've got doesn't support access point mode, so it won't work as an access point. But the one that does is like the genuine, like the proper Raspberry Pi Wi-Fi dongle, but they're like hen's teeth. Everyone's sold out of them. You can't get them at the Pipe, you can't get them at Amazon, you can't get them anywhere. And then also I want to do some reverse engineering. For example, things like the Wi-Fi plugs, because not all devices are lucky enough to have an API, and not everybody's got to write one on GitHub as yet. So, because the Raspberry Pi runs Linux, and Linux is absolutely brilliant for like hacking all sort of networking stuff, I'm going to be doing a lot of packet sniffing of what's going between the phone app and the Internet of Things devices to see exactly what the protocols are that these things are talking to each other by. And then there's the thing where I want to do like my own version of if this then that, so that would be like controlling multiple devices. So that'll be like another Spring Boot app that like sits on top of what I've just demonstrated. So if I've got Open Energy Monitor, which I want to get in due course for the solar panels, then if the solar panels are generating enough electricity because it's a nice bright sunny day, then it'll turn, for example, like the washing machine on or the tumble dryer on, so I can make best use of the free electricity. And then when I get the Mycroft units in the summer, then I'm going to get proper voice control working. So it'll be like, Mycroft, play a movie. And as soon as I say that, it'll automatically like dim the lights in the lounge, so you've got like your movie lights, and then it'll play the film on the telly for you. So that sort of thing. And I don't know if there's sound on the screen or not, but this is cool. This is actually, where's the sound on my Mac gone? So I need to find the sound on the Mac because you need sound for this really. Actually, I've got let's have that from this one.
Start some coffee, will you? Mycroft, next to Alice's room. Alice, sweetie, it's time to begin. Mycroft, the rest of the babies in the room.
So that's like Pandora, something like Spotify over in the States. So you can just like talk to Mycroft and play that machine if you want. And then it's the little girl's asking for it to play the film on Netflix.
Mycroft, what's on the schedule for today?
Sarah has a meeting with Tim at 10 a.m. Alice has soccer at 4:30 p.m. Peter will arrive at the airport at 7 p.m.
Mycroft, lock up for the day.
Introducing Mycroft.
So that was Mycroft, and hopefully I'll get these units from Kickstarter in the summer, and I'll be able to have like proper voice control for controlling the house, and lots of Raspberry Pis. And that's just a link to the further resources. So both the slide deck and the example code are available on GitHub as Spring Boot applications. Then there's links to EasyBulb, OpenHab. Then there's the Java API that I used for controlling the lights that I put the Spring Boot controller on top of, and then Spring Boot itself. And we've got an Internet of Things blog on Tumblr as well. Any questions, please?
Got a quick one about there was a class in your code about controlling the lights.
Yeah.
How do you actually configure that to talk to the lights? Is there some kind of configuration? Is there something like that in that?
I'll show you what I've got for now, Mark, and this is very much belt and braces.
Yeah.
In the constructor, it's got the IP address of the controller box hard-coded,
Yeah.
but ultimately that'll be in like properties file or something like that. It didn't seem to want to resolve it by DNS name because the host name of that box is EasyBulb, but the Raspberry Pi 2 wasn't resolving like host names on the local network for some reason, so I just hard-coded it by IP to get it working for now. But I mean, ultimately what I think would be really good is to have a web app where you've got like a nice configuration screen where you can like enter the details of all your devices, and it will automatically configure itself to talk to them. Because I think that's something why I guess a lot, Internet of Things has been quite slow in terms of adoption, just because these sort of solutions can be really quite complicated to configure if you're not techie. I mean, what would be even better is, it's like when you get the EasyBulb controller out of the box, it's got its own SSID of something like MyLight. And what the phone app does, that will, I think it's actually, it might even send your Wi-Fi password unencrypted across to this other SSID. I mean, hopefully there's some sort of encryption there. And then when it's sent the Wi-Fi details, like the SSID of your router and the username and password, it will then store that in the Wi-Fi box, and it will reboot itself. And instead of behaving like an access point, it will just behave like a normal Wi-Fi device that then connects to your router. So that's the way you actually configure these things in the first place. You connect to the devices default SSID, so it's like, for the EasyBulbs that's My Light, and for the Wi-Fi plugs that's PTS Wi-Fi. I think the reason that they're called like different things from the name of the product is that both of these products are sort of like Chinese imports that have been rebranded for the UK market, but they've still got the original SSIDs for the Wi-Fi that the Chinese manufacturers have put on there in the first place.
It's a clever way to do it. Advertising the SSID. I have that problem on a project right now. How to bootstrap the network configuration
Yeah,
and devices for sending out.
yeah. I mean, hopefully I'll find a way of doing that. It's probably going to require a lot of executing bash scripts on Raspberry Pis, because you can execute shell scripts from within Java. Because I've done similar stuff for getting Java programs to resize images using ImageMagick in the past as well. Any other questions, please? Cool. I'll hand over to Mark for the next talk.